Let's get started, I guess. So welcome to the Clear Admit Application Insight Event Series. This event is all about Deferred Enrollment MBA programs. I'm going to do some quick introductions. I'll start with me. I'm the co-founder of Clear Admit. I don't have too much to say other than that I have an MBA, did an MBA at Wharton, and have been working at Clear Admit for more than 20 years now. So that's enough about me. I'm going to try to stay out of the way here as we listen to our panelists talk about their programs, but let's introduce each of them briefly. So first up, we have Verse Gabrielle. She's the Senior Associate Director for Accelerated Access at Berkeley's Haas School of Business. Welcome, Verse.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Excellent. Next up, we're going to also have on the panel Gina Cicchetti. She is the Associate Director of Master's Admissions at Carnegie Mellon University's Tepper School of Business. Hey, Gina.
Hi, welcome everyone.
Great to have you. Next up, we also have Daniel Perez, and he is the Associate Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Wharton, and also knows a lot about their deferred access program. So we're going to learn more about that as we go through here. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you.
Great to have you. And next up, we've got Catherine Alford. She's Director of Admissions for the Future Year Scholars Program at University of Virginia, Darden. Welcome, Catherine.
Thanks, Graham. I'm excited to get started.
Yeah, excellent. It's great to have you. And last but not least, we've got Kate Botello. She is the Senior Associate Director of Admissions at the Yale School of Management, and she's going to be here to talk about the Silver Scholars Program at Yale. So welcome, Kate.
Thanks so much, Graham.
So let's dive in. We wanted to start with I'm going to try to give like a really quick kind of background on like what is deferred enrollment. And essentially, I think most of our attendees know that normally when you go to business school, you have to have had some professional experience. So most people, when they go to a business program for graduate school and earn an MBA, they come in with like 4 or 5 years of experience. And so what that's meant historically is you apply after you've been working for a while. You know, you have your 3 or 4 years, you apply to business school, work for another year or so before you start, and then you're off you go. But what's amazing about deferred enrollment MBAs is that it's an opportunity for college seniors, or in some cases, current grad school students who've like started a master's degree right after undergrad, to apply to business school and sort of lock in a spot in a future MBA class. And it does vary. We'll hear from Yale. Their program's a little bit different than the others here, but essentially you can apply while you're a college senior or finishing your master's degree, if it's a straight through master's, and get a slot in a business school class. And then in the case of most of the programs on our panel, you go off and work for a while, and they all have different requirements in terms of what you're going to do while you're working. But this is just an amazing opportunity. And I say that as someone who has an MBA, but wasn't able to do deferred enrollment because it didn't really exist when I was looking. And I would have absolutely jumped at the chance to kind of get myself situated at a top MBA program like this in advance kind of. So we'll get into it. And I'm sure that our panelists will more eloquently explain what deferred enrollment is. But let's dive in with a couple of sort of general questions that we had. And we're gonna start with Verse over at Berkeley. Haas, I wanted to ask you, Verse, like, why should someone consider deferred enrollment or early access MBA, as these types of programs are called? And if you're willing, maybe comment as well on when it might be better for someone not to consider it and just follow the more traditional path.
Gotcha. No, it's a great question. I think a deferred MBA program is a really great new pathway, which kind of bypasses a lot of roadblocks that prevent a lot of undergraduates from applying to these programs. Also, this route kind of relieves the stress and intimidation many college seniors or even some graduate students feel while planning their first career steps following graduation. I think this opportunity kind of grants candidates more autonomy and creativity with your professional goals and exposure. Candidates can apply to a program before exiting their undergraduate or graduate institution with the notion that they can experiment and try new things professionally, knowing they have an MBA in their back pocket in a sense. Also, I'll say that deferred programs kind of encourage valuable networking with the school, with your fellow, cohort, through exclusive networking events, newsletters, and kind of like social media groups. And as far as like holding off, I would kind of recommend candidates take time and pursue the traditional application path if they aren't sure, what they, will accomplish with an MBA, or if they believe like more work experience will strengthen their candidacy. However, I think it's really important to note that you can get more than one kind of bite of the apple, because you can apply to the accelerated access program, for example. And if you aren't admitted, you can apply again to the traditional rounds without any negative impact, and not to mention that you get kind of like this early exposure to the application process, which is a one up. So that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, wow, well said. Yeah, and I think you've hinted at something that I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about as we go through this session, about this idea of once you've kind of locked in a spot in an MBA program, it gives you a lot of freedom to take sort of risks and do maybe different things with your career than if you're kind of haven't applied yet and need to make sure that everything kind of works perfectly as you kind of prepare your candidacy for down the road. Let's turn to Gina, though. Gina, any thoughts on these two questions here? Like, what would you say in terms of someone considering these types of programs, or maybe going the more traditional route?
Yeah, I think first answered the questions beautifully. But there is, for the candidates who just aren't sure at the moment, I mean, it's difficult getting ready to graduate, a lot of uncertainty. Maybe you just know you want to go to grad school, but don't really have a direction or even a tiny little plan. So maybe a program like deferred admission isn't necessarily for those candidates. If they have many, many different interests, then I would say go find that work experience, try and carve out your path, because then in the end, that will make you a better graduate school applicant, just having a little bit more of those goals defined.
Got it. Yeah, that's a really good point too. Danielle, anything that you want to add on this subject?
Yeah, definitely, Graham. So, I want to echo everything that said. I think when you're thinking about, considering deferred enrollment, one of the benefits it's that it gives you those professional liberties that otherwise you'd be worried about in how it would reflect in an application down the line if you were to go the traditional route. Now, to that second question, I think it's a confidence level call. I think if you're pretty confident MBA will be a benefit in your future, or you're going for it, at the end of the day, call it a 60-70% confidence level, then this is a way to start that process early. My job is to try to get as many folks to apply, but I also want to be cognizant of, you all have a lot going on right now. So when I think about, how can I tell someone to hold off if they need a hold off? I would say the only way I dissuade someone from going through this process is if it'd be a detriment to their mental well-being. If you're going through graduation, you're going through job placement, you gotta get your GRE or GMAT as well, and then also go through the application process. So just know there's always ample opportunity to apply later on as well, if you so choose and desire.
Yeah, that's a good point. So let's Catherine, is there anything that you want to add on this one? Anything when you think about, who's kind of who should be considering deferred and who shouldn't be?
Yeah, sure. So I'm kind of a storyteller. So first of all, I do agree with what all of my colleagues have already shared, but I wanted to share this story about a student who I went to the University of Virginia, where I was working, and I really pushed her to apply to business school in her fourth year. And I met up with her in New York about 4 years later, and she was at an event with a bunch of business schools, and she was sitting there listening to this panel of all these schools talking about their programs, and all of the prospective students asking about letters of recommendation and GMAT scores and GRE scores, and do I need to travel to your university to visit, and how much are the application fees for all of these different schools. And I think she started to realize just how much work it is to apply to MBA programs when you are trying to work an 80-hour a week job. And she just looked at me and she said, "Thank you so much for getting me to do this before now, because I am so glad I don't have to deal with all of this currently." So I think we don't always realize how much time and effort it takes to apply to all these MBA programs when we are working professionals, and you have a little bit more time as an undergrad. So that's another benefit.
That's a great point. And I think something that I hear often people saying is not only maybe you have more time now than you would when you're working a really demanding job, but also you're a bit more in academic mode. And so when it comes to taking a standardized test, sometimes that can be a little bit easier while you're still kind of in school, as opposed to waiting a few years when you've kind of forgotten all of your, math and, and everything you might need to excel in one of these tests that some of the programs require. So that's another point. Before we turn to Kate at Yale and get her take on this, I did want to just mention, just as a reminder for those of you who joined us late, at the end of this main session, each of our panelists is going to bounce off into a breakout room. And we'll get you links to join those rooms so that you can ask questions. So if you have specific questions for the panelists about their programs, we'll be able to get into that in those breakouts, which will happen immediately following this main session. But Kate, let me turn to you. What are your thoughts on this? Like, especially because Yale Silver Scholars is a little bit different in that people start, the program immediately out of undergraduate. So tell us a little bit about who should be considering your program and maybe who shouldn't.
Yeah, no, thanks, Graham, especially for kind of putting that little caveat there. So I think about this question a little bit differently than some of my colleagues, but also at the same time agree with everything that they've already said. I do just want to say that I think the MBA, you can accomplish a great many things with it. So when you're thinking about who should be applying to an MBA, kind of regardless of what you want to do, whether it's in corporate America or not, an MBA is really going to prepare you for very various career pathways. So even if you're not a business major in undergrad, in some ways an MBA program can be even more beneficial to you since you don't have the exposure to these courses. And so the Silver Scholars program, you're not deferring your admission for any period of time. You're actually joining us immediately after you graduate. And so when I think of who should be applying to those programs, it's for students who are ready to kind of begin that journey immediately after graduation and who feel that they can join an MBA counterpart who has a number of years of work experience, but based on, your particular internship experience or, academic experiences, you feel that you can contribute to the classroom here at the School of Management, or even again, if you're applying to deferred admission programs, and you're only waiting 2 years, it still puts you at the early side. But then for those who maybe should hold off, like I said, I think any major, any kind of background is applicable to an MBA. But, since you are joining us immediately after, you want to make sure that, again, you feel comfortable and confident enough to be able to add to your learning teams, to be able to raise your hand in an MBA classroom. And if you feel like gaining some work experience would make you a better MBA student, then you should hold off. But if you feel that you're ready now, then an MBA, the Silver Scholars program could be a really wonderful choice after graduation.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, appreciate you outlining that. I mean, I think one of the things that I love about all these opportunities that each of your institutions are offering is that, even if you do defer and don't start immediately like you would at Yale, and you start a couple of years, 3-4 years down the line, I would say on average, you're going to be a little bit younger than your counterparts who are in the program. And so it's really an accelerated way to get the MBA and get back into the workforce. And, again, having an MBA myself, I know the value of like post MBA, all that, anything you can do post MBA work experience wise is great. And the sooner you can get kind of going with that, the better. Let's do some kind of program specific stuff now. So we're going to move on here. And I just wanted to first make sure that our audience knows roughly, what some of the main ingredients are in an application. So we have a list here, and I recognize that the list varies a little bit school to school. For example, not everyone charges the same amount or even an amount to apply. So we'll get into that as well. But you can see these are the sort of key ingredients that go into an application. The other thing we had here, I think, is we have a slide, if I remember correctly, with sort of deadlines so that you can have a sense. What's great is that it's only, very beginning of February. And so you have some time to really think about, these deferred enrollment options and to get applications in. So those are the dates that we have on screen. Obviously, all this is available on the school's websites, but we just thought it'd be useful for folks to see this here. The next thing, though, that I wanted to do is just give each of our panelists a chance to talk about their program. And what I wanted to have happen is, we're going to start with Verse at Berkeley Haas. What I wanted to have happen is I'd love for you to just introduce us to an aspect of your program that sort of makes it different from the traditional MBA. So some element, and I know, Verse, you were mentioning there's some kind of special groups that form for people while they're in that kind of between undergrad and joining the program. But, whatever you want to dive into would be great. And then also, if possible, highlight one aspect of the admissions process that you want candidates to be aware of.
Great questions, Graham. Definitely. So, definitely read the slide. Great stuff on there. I would say one of the biggest differences, as far as the traditional MBA, is the work experience. In a typical MBA program, candidates are expected to have full-time work experience, whereas the Accelerated Access program kind of allows candidates to gain conditional admissions and explore kind of professional innovative opportunities for around 2 to 5 years. And at the time of matriculation, you can kind of also apply to one of our dual degree programs, MPH, JD, or MEng, and our certificate programs. And also, as far as like an aspect of the admissions process that I really want you all to be aware of, one of our essays this year has been updated. So we want to know, what are your post-MBA career goals, and how can the Haas MBA really help you with those goals? This takes some self-reflection and some forethought. It's also okay if these goals change over time. However, like I said, it's super important to have an idea. So that's what I would say about our program, Grant.
Excellent. Yeah. And so when we get moving into the essay segment, if you want to comment more on any, I think, are you still asking some of those other questions that we've talked about, like what makes you feel alive and all that stuff too?
Absolutely. The
Okay.
Alive essay is still there. We love that essay. It's one of the most open-ended questions. But this time around, we wanted to update the second essay to really get an idea of what those post-MBA career goals, what are you thinking about right now?
Sure.
And it truly is okay if it changes.
Right. Okay. Excellent. And I'm sure that's going to come up as we go through here, because I think I have a question for one of the panelists, and I can't remember which one, about, kind of what if your goals change, because everyone's a senior, or, kind of in university, or finishing a master's maybe. And so things change as time goes by. All right. So let's move on though. We've got Gina up next. So Gina, I'd love for you to do the same thing. Just tell us about an aspect of your program that makes it different from the traditional MBA, and then also one piece of the admissions process that you want candidates to be aware of.
Yeah, so I think, something Tepper prides itself on, we're a smaller school, so community is very important. And during the deferral period, we hope you get that sense of community with, through the Slack groups, different events that we host throughout the year. And when we're able to travel, if we're able to connect and, attend any of the sessions. So, again, I think it's nice to develop that cohort, that sense of belonging before you enter, because the onboarding process for the traditional MBAs is a lot more condensed. So you get a couple years to really develop those friendships with your cohort. What is somewhat different about our program for admissions is it's only open to those graduating from a U.S. institution. So if you're graduating from an international school, you are not eligible. But if you're an international student graduating from a U.S. institution, then yes, you would be eligible. So I think that's what makes our program different compared to others.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for underlining that. And I think that is an important point. So one of the things we're getting lots of questions in the chat and the Q&A, and I know we've asked people to kind of hold those questions for for the breakouts that all of you are going to jump into afterwards. But there is a theme here that I'm seeing, which is, a lot of people are wondering about test scores and grades, and whether those kind of what I would call counting stats are sort of more important in this cohort of younger candidates because they don't have the work experience, et cetera. And so I don't know, Gina, are you willing to just maybe quickly, because I see a lot of questions about this, and I don't want our audience to feel like we're ignoring them. So are you willing to comment on that?
Yeah, certainly. I think this is something you have to look at every school. Ours is still open to test waivers, so there might be a little bit sigh of a relief not having to take a test your senior year. However, my colleagues, please jump in, but I think a lot of us accept either the GRE or GMAT. We want you to take the test that you feel the most confident in, that you can score well. And I would say to gauge where you fall is that class profile. We're not particularly holding you to having higher than the 80th percentile of the class for stats. If you fit into that class profile, you are looked as a competitive candidate in that sense.
Okay. Does anyone, I know we're kind of going off script a little bit, but is there anyone in the group here of panelists that feels really differently about that? Or is that, in terms of, do you need to have better stats, or as long as they're looking at the class profile, are we comfortable with that? I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. Okay. So we'll just keep moving then. All right. So Daniel, let's turn to you and talk a little bit about Wharton's program. Would you be willing to just introduce us to something that's a little different about it as compared to the traditional path, as well as anything about the admissions process that you want to highlight?
For sure, Graham, no problem. So ultimately, the deferred enrollment program is an early avenue to the same full-time MBA program. But if you do get an opportunity to be a part of the deferred program at Wharton specifically, you'll be presented with biannual presentations from MBA career management. There'll be regional happy hours and small group gatherings with other Moelis fellows and Wharton alumni. Our deferred access program is called the Moelis Advanced Access Program, as you see on the slide. You also have access to student-led conferences. Basically, it's an early peek to the wealth of resources prior to matriculating. And then in terms of highlighting a process in our admissions that I would all want you to be informed about is our team-based discussion. So this is honestly, in my opinion, the most fun part of the whole application process. So it's a leaderless exercise where we get to see you collaborate with a group of individuals supporting each other as a team. And notice how I said leaderless exercise. So keep that in mind as you go through the application process if you're thinking about Wharton specifically.
Excellent. Thanks for that tidbit. Yeah, I think that is, something that differentiates Wharton a little bit in terms of how you all conduct those interviews. Jen, can I just ask you though, I presume that for the team-based discussion for advanced access, you're only putting advanced access candidates together, or are you mixing with the sort of general pool? But the deadlines are different. So I'm assuming it's a separate thing, right?
Yeah, so you'll be amongst individuals applying through the Moelis program. So because the deadlines are different, and the TBDs are scheduled with that cohort of individuals applying with you.
Okay, great. So that'll probably comfort some folks here who are maybe were wondering if they'd be in a team-based discussion with folks who have like lots of years of work experience or something. Okay, appreciate that. Catherine, let's turn to you and do the same thing for Darden future year scholars. Let's walk through it.
Okay, so one difference being a part of the Future Year Scholars program as opposed to applying later for the MBA program is obviously access to the network, but also a little bit of career programming. One thing that surprises a lot of MBA students is how quickly recruiting does begin in the two-year MBA journey. And so we do try to provide a lot of information to those in the deferral period about what that process looks like and how to begin leveraging the time they have in their deferral period to be able to hit the ground running once they arrive in business school, and also to help them think about when the best time to matriculate might be. And then in terms of an aspect that I would want candidates to be aware of is that Darden does accept the SAT and ACT test score in lieu of a GMAT or GRE. I do see a lot of people apply with submitting both GMAT, GRE, and ACT, SAT scores, but if you are think that your SAT and ACT score is very competitive, we have admitted people without GMATs or GREs. Not the best decision if you are wanting to be seriously considered for merit-based scholarship, but for admission, it works.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, thanks for underlining that too. Kate, you've been very patient. It's by virtue of being at the back end of the alphabet. So let's talk a little bit about Silver Scholars at Yale, and just introduce us to an aspect of the program that makes it different, and then highlight something about admissions.
Absolutely. Thanks, Graham. So actually what I'm going to talk about is kind of presented very nicely here on the slide. So the big thing that is different with the Silver Scholars program, when you're comparing it to our traditional MBA program, is you would still, like I said, you would join immediately after you graduate your undergraduate experience. You join us in that August and start your MBA program. For your first year of our core curriculum, it's a shared core curriculum amongst all of our MBA students. You're in that with our traditional students as well. It's not a specific Silver Scholars core curriculum experience. And then you leave us for at least 1 year. So here it says year 2, but it's at least 1 year. It's more flexible. Students can leave us for 2 if they want, 3 years to pursue a full-time work experience. So it doesn't have to be just an internship. It can be full-time work. And then you'll return to us and complete your MBA program for that 3rd year of elective coursework, which can be completed in any Yale classroom. So that's the big difference with the Silver Scholars program, is that your work experience actually comes right in the middle of your MBA. And so we extend kind of what is that traditional summer internship, I guess, to full-time work experience. And then for the application, I kind of want to be a little general here, because I think one of the questions we get a lot is about work experience and how we look at that as Silver Scholars. So and kind of even in the deferred enrollment program. So when you're crafting your resume, just be very intentional about the internships you've been a part of, the extracurriculars you've been a part of. We want to learn about all of that. That's all very important to us. So any leadership opportunities, any involvement you've had, that's all really interesting to us. So make sure you put those activities on that resume, so we get to learn a little bit more about your professional, but also, your undergraduate experience.
Okay, great. Yeah. And I think, I really appreciate you kind of laying this out. And one thing that I think both, I guess it's Danielle and you have underlined, is that it's not like a different program. So when we talk about deferred enrollment and these deferred MBA programs, you're really just joining the regular MBA program, but you're getting an option, to start later, or in this case, to start right away and then go off and work and come back. So I just want to be clear about that as we kind of go through here. I think we're going to now stay with you, Kate, because I want to go backwards through the alphabet and try to be fair about discriminating against the letter Y here or something. So we're going to start with you as we talk specifically about your kind of application process. And I had a question for you, which is really about this essay question. And I was thinking, like, did you have advice as to how a college student might brainstorm for this one? And, is it like, does the commitment have to be something very like grown up and professional? Or, like what if someone's been, I don't know, playing a sport at university for the last 4 years, and that's been like a huge commitment for them, but they're thinking, oh, this is business school. I've got to pick, something related to my career, or something more professional. Like what advice would you give somebody who's grappling with this question?
I'm so happy you positioned the question this way, Graham, honestly, because, I obviously host a lot of sessions helping students through the application process, and the essay is by far the #1 thing that we get the most questions on, Silver Scholar or general MBA applicant. And so I would actually tell a Silver Scholar the same thing I would tell one of our traditional MBA applicants as well. It's not necessarily the commitment itself that we're here to judge. We're not making value judgments on the commitment you choose. As Graham was saying, the commitments you've made when you're 20, 21, 22, they look so vastly different than the commitments you make at 25, 26, 27, right? And it's not that big of an age difference, but so much life happens. In my life is not what you all will value in your own lives. And so what we are interested in learning about is how you approach big commitments in your life. And so, I think Graham brings up a great point about, if you're an athlete or you have this extracurricular that's taken a significant amount of your time, those are all really important to us. And like I said, how you approach those commitments really tells us a lot about how you value yourself and other people, how you commit to others in your life as well. We learn a lot about you and what you're passionate about. And so don't rack your brain trying to think of like what we want to hear. And really, you shouldn't approach any aspect of your application that way, but especially the essay. Don't approach it in what we want to hear or what's business school relevant. We read wonderful essays that are very personal and have nothing to do with what you'll do in business school. And so just, brainstorm, think of a couple things, think of 1 to 2 topics, 1 to 2 commitments that you've come up with, and chances are, it'll be one of those things. So don't spend, days and days like trying to figure this out. I think, usually your first, gut instinct is the best instinct.
Okay, perfect. I really appreciate you kind of addressing that, because it's just something that was on my mind. And I was just thinking, if I'm a college senior looking at this question, I would be worried about. So it's great to know that it's really about the journey and the kind of what you've been doing to be committed to whatever it is, as opposed to, I'm assuming the admissions committee is not sitting around saying, oh, we don't like that commitment, so therefore,
Yeah, I hate running,
okay.
So no, this is bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Well, thanks for doing that. So let's continue our way. I'm gonna have to now remember the reverse order of everyone here. So Catherine at Darden, the slides help. So Catherine, are you, can you just, I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you, you guys have these short answers, which we squeezed kind of onto the slide, and they're, these really nice short kind of questions that allow people to sort of stretch out and give, these 3 like little snapshots. So I love that. So one of the questions I had though is, and we've kind of been hinting at this, but it says your career question begins with these words, at this time. And that feels just tailor-made for deferred enrollment, because, it's at this time. You don't really know what you're going to do down the road, but you have to sort of approximate. And so is that why that wording is there? Was it to sort of just give people that freedom and leeway?
Yes, I think so many people get really stressed out about, oh my gosh, I have to know what I'm going to be doing for the next 40 years of my career in order to answer this question. And we all have expectations that your mind is going to change. But what we're all looking for in our applicants is self-reflection and self-awareness. So being able to say, at this point, I know these things about myself, and therefore I could see myself going in one of these directions. And through these directions, I'll be able to learn a little more about this interest or that interest and kind of go from there.
Okay. And then because you guys have short answers, I wanted to ask you about another one of them, because I just feel like we can get a couple things accomplished here. So the next one is that first short answer question where, I mean, it's a great question. Like, what is important for your classmates to know about you that's not on your resume? But I just wondered, I don't know if you were willing to share, like, are there any like things that you've seen in the past that sort of jumped out at you, or like what goes on here? Is it like, I have the high score at the arcade on this game? Like what do you want to know here? And what would you sort of not want to know?
Or I call this our personality question. I think it gives us a little bit of an insight into the things that you're excited about and that you care about that are not your professional career or your academic experience. At Darden, the students are paired on learning teams that meet Sunday through Wednesday evenings for about 3 hours. And so the context of the fact that what do you want people that are on this team with you to know about you might imply a little bit of what do you like to work with? How do people, what do you bring to a team? Are you the cheerleader? Are you the organizer? Are you the strategist, et cetera? Kind of what would be important for people that are spending all this time working with you on a team to know about you.
Got it. Excellent. Yeah, I feel like that it would just be a lot of fun to read these answers, right? I mean, it's kind of just interesting to get to hear.
We see a little bit of everything, and there's no right or wrong as long as it's authentic to you. But to Kate's point of don't spend days and days and days thinking about this, I just kind of want to point out that I think some of the essays are the most part of the application process. And you are not applying for a PhD in English literature. You don't need to be the most charismatic, dynamic writer out there. We're looking for strong communicators. So as long as you can just answer the question, kind of what Kate said, usually the first thing that comes to mind is the direction to go, and just get it down, then move on. Don't spend too much time on these.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Thanks for going through those. Let's move on and talk with Danielle about Wharton. So here are the essays. And I did want to, I wanted to ask you to comment specifically on these 2 questions in the sense that like advice for younger candidates, because both of these questions are somewhat, involving a bit of guesswork, right? About how this candidate might spend their time in the future and what they could be bringing into the program, et cetera. So I don't know if, so for example, in the second question, where it's like, what kind of contributions might you make? Like, would it be too much for the candidate to sort of make some assumptions about what they're hoping to do in the intervening years before they start? Or should they stick to like, I've already done this, and so I'm bringing it with me to Wharton kind of thing?
Yeah, so 2 points on that. So I think Catherine from Darden summed it up right. Because you're younger, the goals you identify don't need to be so clear, and we know that. But if you can convey your personal or professional orientation and help us understand some of the early steps you might take to reach said path, including how the MBA might help you reach that pathway or satisfy that, I think you'll be in great shape. I think also, some of the questions here, what we're trying to basically gauge is, do you vibe with us and do we vibe with you? And so, we're not just looking for students who are interested in a traditional, business field such as finance or marketing or management, but also those who have unique interests and perspectives that they'll contribute to our community and our diverse learning environment. So, sometimes the way that I think about it, specifically, not just to Moelis, but to all our peer institutions here, are our program fit. So, does our program fit your needs? Do you fit our program needs? And there's a wealth of resources online, Reddit, a bunch of, official and unofficial ways that you can understand and learn how to navigate that.
Yeah, that's excellent. I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you as well is, on the website, it talks about how, the program will accept a highly selective cohort of students. I think that's probably true with all of our the programs here today. But also there's this line where it says whose academic and career interests expand the traditional notions of business education. And that's something that, again, probably applies to the group here. But I remember when these types of programs were first introduced, there was this notion of like, maybe we can expand the scope of who we're looking at for business school, and get business school on the radar of some undergrads who might ordinarily be thinking, oh, I'm going to go off and do something else, because there are a lot of options for undergrads. And so is that still something that's kind of at the forefront of the thinking here in terms of trying to attract, people who may be interested in science, but you want to kind of pivot them more towards kind of working in life sciences on the business side or whatever it might be?
Exactly. And we're getting some bureaucratic miss when we pose that question. But like I mentioned earlier, what we're trying to gauge is whether you're coming from, the traditional path or maybe a bit more untraditionally, or you want to go into an untraditional path. We're interested in learning what you can do. And when you think about our peer institutions here in this call as well, we attract people from a variety of, different fields, different cultures. We attract people globally. So one of the things that we're trying to gauge is, how those unique interests and perspectives will contribute to our community. So like you said, Graham, we're pretty open to those folks that are coming from, traditional backgrounds or want to go into traditional backgrounds, but also folks that want to do something a little bit different, but bring that business knowledge with them.
Okay, great. Yeah, appreciate you answering that. I know, yeah, these are the goal with this is obviously I'm hoping to hit upon these questions that our audience maybe are kind of mulling over as they look at deferred enrollment and look at your individual programs. So thanks for shedding light there. Gina, let's turn to you and talk a little bit about Tepper. I wanted to ask you, I guess I'll start with the question about why the Future Business Leaders Program format is a good fit. So I guess, I don't know, I don't want to have you give the answers away, but it'd be good if you could just shed some light on, like what are some possible reasons? Like what's the kind of scope of possibility here that someone might have in terms of the format being the right fit for them?
Yeah, for us, we're looking at kind of, how seriously did you look at our program in a way to determine that fit? I always think that you are the driver of the fit. You're showing that our school has similar interests that you're looking to learn about, maybe help you with your post MBA goals, the student organizations, and just getting to know the current students, doing a little bit of outreach to learn more. Maybe there was somebody at your internship and you really connected with, they've developed into a mentor and they happen to be one of our alums. There's ways to show that you have seriously considered Tepper and you can see yourself being there as a student.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. And I think I want to also talk about this first question, which is a very short kind of answer question. But the thing that strikes me and that I'm assuming some of our attendees here today have kind of keyed in on is it says, what company are you joining? And this is a common question that people ask in these types of events, which is, oh, what if I don't know yet, what job I have after university? I'm still kind of looking, but the application deadline is in April. What do I do in that situation if they don't know? Like, is it okay to sort of speculate, or what would you advise someone who's like filling out the application and doesn't yet have that job lined up?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, if I don't know, that is perfectly fine. I think these are just some questions to help us get to know you about your plans as well. And, what is your post undergraduate career plan? Maybe it's already determined. Maybe you're still waiting for offers, and you haven't figured that out yet. Tell us, you're hoping to join X industry. You're still interviewing, but when your first job's determined, you will let us know, kind of thing. And I think, again, it's acceptable to have that, I don't know, I'm still kind of trying to figure out the options, but just being open and telling us, it's
Okay.
not going to hurt you.
Got it. Yeah. And I think one of the things I was wondering is like whether it would be enough to say, here's what I would like to do. And I'm currently interviewing for jobs in this domain. I don't have the role yet lined up. They haven't made an offer, but here's what I'm hoping to do and what I would want to do, over the coming years, I guess, before starting.
Yes, certainly. Again, it's that, just what is that goal? What do you hope to do? That's just what we want to know.
Okay, perfect. All right. So Verse, now I got to thank you for being patient as we've kind of gone backwards through the alphabet here. And I guess what you were saying earlier is that this second essay is probably incorrect because you've updated it. So would you be willing to share again, just what is the second essay question, just for those tuned in who want to get a leg up and know what this is going to be? Looks like we're going to actually type it out here. Is that what's going on?
Awesome. Absolutely. So we updated it this year as we wanted to gain a little bit more insight into who you are and why the MBA, why Haas. So for the second question, it's not really necessarily the leadership question versus in our general application. So we actually want to know, what are your post-MBA career goals and how do you think the Haas MBA will help you get to those goals? And so,
Okay.
I think this is a really great time for reflection and forethought. It's also, like I said, it's okay if these goals change, but it's really important to have an idea. We want you to be authentic. And also, if there are specific elements of the Haas MBA that kind of align with your career goals, you can absolutely mention it. But you don't have to like cite, well, this and this and that. We know our program, but it's about why it connects with you. But this can appear in your essays and the career goals and the optional section portion in the LORs. They can kind of reinstate and affirm your career goals as well. But it's also, like I said, important to kind of do your homework on the why Haas and why the MBA.
Okay, perfect. I have to give a shout out to Mike on our team here who somehow managed to edit a live slide deck. I don't really know how he even did that, but but I want to ask you about this first question.
Yes.
Because and this is something that I've asked other members of your team about, but I love this question. It's a fun question. But I
Yes.
wondered, it's sort of that same thing where we were talking a little bit earlier with Kate at Yale about a commitment you've made. So I wondered, like, what if the thing that makes somebody feel alive is like getting out on a surfboard or something in the Pacific each morning, or a couple days a week, or something where they're like, oh, but that's not really related to my career plan, or it's not very
Mhm.
academic, or like, what do you like? Yeah. Would you be willing to share, like, what do people often talk about here? Are there things that like jumped out at you, and is it sort of anything goes?
Honestly, this is my favorite essay, and I'm so happy that it has not changed. We've tweaked it a little bit, but honestly, this is the most open-ended question in the application process. Um, a lot of applicants will come to us and say, can this be professional? Do you want it to be personal? And honestly, it's up to you. I can't make you or tell you what makes you feel alive. For me, it's poetry, it's music, it's hip hop, and I would write about that and take you on that journey with me. But if it's stats and it's, community building, it's about you and your personal goal. It's absolutely all things go. It's really how you show up on a day-to-day basis. Who are you? I would say don't address a topic that's too big for this portion. It's only 300 words. Read it to your family members, read it to friends. Are you conveying what makes you feel alive? I read poems about skiing, about running, about meditation, about hiking, about glamping, and it's just who they are. It's like, oh, I get to know you. For the first essay, I always say, take a step back and look at what you've submitted to the admissions committee. Have I submitted a very professional, this is what I want to do, but is my personal and how I show up on a day-to-day missing? And if it is, I would encourage you to go personal for the first essay response.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing these kind of examples, and just encouraging people to, yeah, answer the question basically, which sounds
Please
obvious,
do.
right? But and also for summarizing it as like, it's kind of, some people take a personal route, some people take more of a professional route, and that either is perfectly fine. So that would have been a more succinct way for me to phrase the the question too. But yeah, appreciate you shedding light there. The only other thing I wanted to ask you is, like many programs, you ask for a resume.
Yes.
And making a resume when you're a college student is like really different than, if you're kind of off in the workforce for 4 years already and have like several kind of big time career things happening, et cetera. So any advice there? Like, are there things that college students should be putting on their resume that maybe, can fill the space a little? Because sometimes
Mm.
there's not as much stuff to talk about.
Absolutely. No, this is a really great question. I would say highlight your strengths. We know that you all don't have full-time work experience. Like, don't try to pull it out of the sky out of somehow just for this application process. You don't have to do that. Showcase your internships, your extracurricular activities. What type of informal or formal leadership did you have in your undergraduate or during your graduate program? Ideally, we only want the resume to be one page, so it doesn't have to be 3 pages long. 3 to 4 bullets, per internship or role. And I would also say treat your resume as another essay in which you kind of take us on this professional journey thus far. Also, sometimes candidates list their job offers. That's absolutely fine. Incoming analysts, show some pride in what's going on with you. And we do have the boot camp for the Accelerated Access Program and a step-by-step guide with some application prep webinars coming up in early March. So we want to prep you all as much as possible. We want to be a resource to you. But the resume, one page, 3 to 4 bullets. Let us know what you did in that internship, what brought you joy, what's your legacy that you kind of left at the organization or company that you worked for. So that's what we're looking for.
Okay, excellent. And yeah, you point out that there is a really great video on your website that candidates can watch that talks specifically about writing the resume. So I'll just direct people towards that too. All right, so we're just about 10 minutes away from sending you all off onto your individual breakout rooms. So that candidates can join you. And we will get everyone joining here the links to those breakouts. But in the meantime, we have a couple of just fun lightning round questions that I wanted to zip through. So we're going to start with this one and we'll stay with you, Verse. The first thing I wanted to ask is just, what's one thing deferred enrollment candidates could do to stand out in your admissions process? It's a tough question.
Please, 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 I beg of you, just be yourself, be authentic. Don't write responses that you think we want to read. Give the admissions committee some insight into who you are on the day to day. How do you show up? Exemplify that leadership potential in your profile. And when I think of an MBA, I think of leadership, and demonstrate that in your extracurriculars and your internships. And at Haas, we're really dedicated to building equity fluent leaders. So if that aligns with you, come on over.
Okay. Excellent. All right, Gina, how about you? One thing that you think a deferred enrollment candidate can do to stand out?
I think just get to know the school more and the current students. I think the more information you have about the program, it does, that knowledge does come through in the application that you have thought about this and can see yourself at Tepper.
Okay. Danielle, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm going to echo what Vers said, but I'll go beyond and say, honestly, the best way to stand out is not to try to stand out. I know it sounds weird, but hear me out. So, when you think about our process, because we're looking at the totality of the documents you submit in your application, just be human. Tell us this through the various different application pieces. Remember, we see this holistically, so that we can then conclude, oh, given all of these pieces in totality, this is a unique individual and someone viable that we would want in our community.
Okay, excellent. Catherine, how about you? Any advice for deferred enrollment candidates to stand out or not?
Yeah, seriously. I think everybody's trying so hard to stand out and differentiate and give us what we're looking for. And to Vers and Daniel's point of just being authentic, I kind of equate applying to business school as going to like the psychiatrist's office and sitting on the couch with a box of tissues and reflecting on your life and being able to think about, who am I? Where do I come from? Why have I made the choices that I've made for myself and my education and my career? And then being able to speak thoughtfully as to who you are. That actually does differentiate 22-year-olds from one another, because some have really done that work to try to understand themselves and some have not. And the ones who have really thoughtfully pursued their life up to this point and can speak to it really differentiate themselves from the pack.
Okay, great advice. All right. And then Kate, any thoughts that you have on standing out?
Going last is really the worst.
I know, I'm sorry.
Think everybody has said it so well. I think that Catherine really kind of summed it up perfectly. When I'm in an interview with a Silver Scholar, the best thing that they could have done is done the reflection, know why an MBA is what they need to get them to where they want to be in the world. Even if they're not 100% sure what those career paths are going to be, they've really thought about it and they understand what they can get and the value of an MBA. And so that's really exciting to be able to talk to somebody who has really kind of thoughtfully thought that out.
Yeah. And Kate, would you say, I mean, you can totally shoot this down, but given that the Silver Scholars are going to go straight in to the core curriculum in the fall and be alongside the traditional MBA students who have 4 or 5 or more years of experience in many instances, is there there's got to be, you're looking for folks who can kind of hold their own in that environment a little bit or have that maturity like you're suggesting, or?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We want to make I think everybody here in the admissions process, the number one thing that we're all trying to do is make sure that we're admitting students who are going to be successful in the program. It's an academic program, you want to get a good job, and we want to make sure we're admitting students who are going to do that. And so similarly with Silver Scholars, yeah, we want to make sure that they can hold their own and that they feel comfortable and confident to pursue what they want to pursue and raise their hand when the time calls for it as well.
Got it. Okay. So we have one more lightning round question, but it's going to be super fast because I think it's just a kind of sort of a really fun one. I feel like we have it here. Yeah. Describe your student community in 3 words. So Kate, we'll start with you. 3 words about Yale SOM.
Okay. Now I don't want to go first. No, I would say, I think we're all going to use very similar words here. So I'll actually cop out and use our mission and say business and society really sums up our students.
Okay, excellent. Catherine?
Okay, probably similar words, but I would say supportive, challenging, and transformational.
Okay, excellent. Danielle?
I'm going to cheat a little bit and say a little bit more than 3 words, but students leave it better, collaborative, impactful.
Okay, excellent. Gina?
I'd say a great community.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, this is interesting because we've been doing these sessions many times in the past, and I'm hearing more little sentences now, which is interesting as opposed to just 3 words. So,
gotta switch it up.
Yeah. All right. Vers, how about you? 3 words.
I would say collaborative, innovative, and kind.
Excellent. All right. So what we're going to do now, I know everyone's has questions for each of you about your program specifically. And so we're going to send you off. Each of our panelists is going to go and open up a separate Zoom where you can come in and talk with them. So what we're going to do is everyone hold here with me, except for our panelists, who I'd love to thank right now. So, Verse, Gina, Danielle, Catherine, and Kate, I really appreciate you doing this today and making time in your busy day. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with all of you and just hearing these insights. So we're going to say goodbye to you. You guys can all go off and get into your individual Zooms, and then we'll get everyone here the links so they can join you. But we want to give our panel some moment to actually get settled. So off you go. Thank you so much. So for those of you here, what we're going to do now is we're going to send you links. We're just going to give our panelists a minute. And while we do that, I'm going to give you a really quick set of tips. So basically, it is, for deferred enrollment, you don't have work experience or beyond internships and things for the most part. And so I would say on the margin, these tips are really accurate. So the first is aim for high scores. Obviously, if you're taking the standardized tests and things for business school, getting a great score just makes your life easier. So while you're working on that stuff, go for it. Try to get a high score. While you may not have as much formal work experience, definitely look to leverage your on-campus leadership. I mean, if you're leading a club or a society or anything happening on your campus, that counts as leadership. So it doesn't have to be all coming from those few summer internships that you've had. The next thing is look beyond the classroom for recommendations. So in the case of a school that's asking for multiple recommendations, you might have one from a professor, but you could also have one from someone that's supervised you either in an internship or even someone on your campus. Maybe it's a dean or, a provost or somebody that you're interacting with in some capacity, a department chair, because of other things you're doing besides classroom work. So keep that in mind. And then, as Gina said at Tepper, engage with the community at these business schools, like reach out, talk to current students. The more you research, the more knowledge you'll have on display in your essays and when you interview and so on. And then last thing, I think, Kate was speaking to this from Yale, demonstrate maturity. So, again, you're basically applying to go to a school in a few years' time, and they're trying to make a judgment on where you're going to be in a few years. And so to the extent that you can kind of show them that you're already ready, that makes their job so much easier. So just demonstrate that maturity. So what's going to happen next is everyone who is joining us will get an email. We're also going to put the links to the chat rooms or the breakout rooms, in the chat here. One thing I would recommend you do is if you see the links come up in chat here, copy and paste them somewhere, like just if you can, just dump them into an email or something so that you can go and bounce, because you can go from room to room. If you have a question for Tepper and you want to ask it, go in there, get it answered, and then you can move on and chat with Wharton or Haas or wherever you want to go, right? So check your email and the chat here. We've got the links coming. Next week, I'm going to be sitting down with representatives from Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Columbia, and Chicago to do the exact same thing, but obviously different schools. So please come out next week if you're interested in deferred enrollment and some of those programs on your list. In the meantime, I just want to thank everyone for taking part today. It means a lot. I know you guys are busy. You have schoolwork and everything else going on campus. So please, thank you so much for taking part and enjoy your individual discussions now with the individual schools.